Welcome to the Casting Forward podcast, brought to you by Clubmate, the all-in-one management platform for clubs and fisheries. We'll be talking all things fish and fishing with new guests every episode from the world of angling, including fishery managers to some of the best anglers in the country, finding out what they're up to, advice for your fishery, and thoughts on the future of the sport.
You can't get any better than this. We've got Mr. Guru himself. We've got Matt Godfrey, podcast extraordinaire himself, and Mr. Tackle Guru. So welcome, Matt. Nice to see you.
Thank you for having me on, mate. Lovely to see you. We've not had a good catch-up for a while, so looking forward to it.
No, we've not spoken properly for quite a while, but just for the audience, let's remind them all that we are pretty good mates. We've known each other for a while, so we are just going to end up nattering all the way through this. I think we're just going to end up talking about a load of old nonsense, to be honest, but maybe someone will listen to it.
There's not been a lot of planning done, is there? So we'll just freestyle it.
Freestyle's always the best, mate, to be fair. I think when you try and script a podcast is when it goes worse.
Yeah. I do it every time in mind, right? I write about 1,000 pages of notes, put them in front of them, start the show, say hello to the guests, and then 3 hours later I've not even looked at them.
Yeah, I mean some of the guru ones, and I mean let's talk about your podcast. You know, we're on the Casting Forward podcast with Clubmate, but let's talk about yours because of course you are right at the pinnacle of angling podcasts. Some of them are, you know, the guests are fantastic, but some of them are epically long. You know, we're talking 3-4 hours in some cases, and from an audience perspective, you know, you just don't even realise it's gone. You know, same as you, I guess. Is it like that when you're filming it?
Yeah, it's literally just a genuine natter with the people. I've got a little clock in the corner now because I don't know how long it's going to go on for. Generally, the telltale sign for me is I really need a pee. And that's when I know, that's like, right, I'm going to have a toilet break. And then Toby, who helps us sort of edit it as we go along, he's normally like, you know, that were 90 minutes, that section. I'm like, flipping it, really, we better get this like moving on a little bit. So it's just a genuine I think that's why podcasts are so good, mate. It's just
I think, mate, the best ones are always like that, aren't they? People are just really interested in hearing a genuine conversation between people on topics that really interest them.
100%.
And like you say, you always feel obligated, don't you? You know, you feel like you owe it to the guests to make sure you've researched them. If you don't know them very well, even if you do know them very well, you probably don't want to insult them by not knowing things about them, of thing. So you do loads of research and you're Googling them all night long and you try and make notes and make sure that you hit things that are important to them. And then you both still just end up chatting for several hours.
That's what happened.
So let's talk podcast then. You know, I noticed this year that the Tackle Guru podcast has reached its 5-year anniversary. Absolutely fantastic. You know, podcasts don't reach any anniversary unless somebody's watching them. So how does that feel?
It's good. I tell you what, it doesn't feel like 5 years though, mate. It's one of them with what we do at Guru. Nothing's ever as serious or structured or planned as what people out there will probably think it is. So the podcast was more of me sat at my desk one day, Toby Clark, who's the man who does all the fancy stuff that I can't do. And he's like, we need to do one for Guru. And I'm like, what's a podcast? I never listened to out like that. I'm still on Radio 1 when I drive to the office. And so he showed me what it was, this, that, and other. And I went, I could do that. I'd enjoy having a chat with some people. And we literally did a little tester in the office. And it were around COVID time. So we could only get Guru people in. We were only allowed to get employees in, which is why the first few we did were like Andy Bennett, Adam Rooney, Dean Macy, people who was within the company, and we just sat down, had a natter. People absolutely loved it, and it's gone from there. And 5 years has been a click of a finger. Like, can't believe it.
How many episodes is that? Do you know roughly how many episodes you're on? I remember seeing
60 odd. I think we're on now 60 odd episodes, which is frightening, unbelievable.
I mean, that's a lot of hours, you know, and I don't know how much. I mean, I quite often find that you think you're going to have to edit loads of this, and you usually don't, because if you get into a really good conversation, you just put most of it out there. You know, you just chuck the whole lot out there.
We've had an odd bit where someone's got a bit carried away and passionate about a story, and there's certain words you're not allowed to say in the media, and there's a very, very odd one of them come out, and that is literally the only tiny bit of editing we ever do. Normally they just go out exactly how they are. I don't know about you, but I think that media, especially the fishing media now, it's more acceptable to real stuff, and people swear in podcasts now, and people will come on and tell stories that 6-7 years ago I'd have been like, "Oh, we can't put that out." But now I think it's actually an edge to be honest and a bit more.
I mean, I don't want to turn this into kind of general politics, but the PC-ness where you weren't allowed to say anything that might offend somebody. I think that we've come out the other end of that a little bit, and you do see I mean, I noticed it on YouTube recently, just on regular old YouTube videos. People are dropping the odd F-bomb kind of thing, and not that I think that I'm not advocating for people all of a sudden swearing all over their podcast, but just more natural speech, and you don't have to avoid saying things. And you're allowed an opinion on, and in angling, that's fantastic, Matt, because I don't know about you, but one of the problems in angling is that there aren't enough people working together on problems. We're not talking about, we can all talk about, and you see this many times in the Tackle Guru podcast, talking about the golden days and, the year has gone by, but there's not enough people talking about how we get back to that, or, whether we get back to that, but how we make that happen again, golden era, V2 kind of thing. And obviously, you've just launched another podcast. You've just started the weigh-in with Rooney and Ringo. Yeah,
that's just a short sort of weekly show that we wanted to do. There's loads of them in football and stuff like that, isn't there? Like where you get a few people having a natter, and we just thought that for the weigh-in, especially this time of year, like October through to March. Loads of fishing's happening, darker nights. We've got a bit more time to do something. So we just wanted to have a little weekly online catch-up and make it a little bit more edgy and probably try and get across those little bit sharper, pointy bits that people are a bit scared of talking about, or, like almost create a platform where everyone can have a bit of an opinion. If someone thinks something, get in touch, tell us, comment on it, send us a message on social media, and if it's a valid, good little point, we'll openly put it out there on the table for you.
I mean, obviously, it's a much more personal podcast, and obviously, did you see a gap in the market for it, or was it just something that again just happened, or whose idea was the weigh-in?
It was a bit. Me and Toby have toyed with it for ages. For about 2 years now, we've been like, wonder when the main show will decline or come to an end, and it's not doing at all. And I've still got lists of dozens of guests that I really want to get on the main show, full interview style. But got to a point where Tobes were like, look, let's just do another one as well. This winter, perfect time. Everyone's got a little bit more time. So we just threw it in there. And it came from, and I think Corda have done their Uncut podcast, which is a chat with Dovey, Spooner, Damo, Reedy, similar sort of vibes. We wanted to do one as well because theirs has been popular. There's loads going on in match fishing to talk about. I also loved what Mick Viles did and Joe Carras with the mixing.
I was just going to say the mixing bowl. I mean, I love you can't beat Mick and Joe. To be fair, great pair of lads, and that. If you wanted a model of what just a chat between mates looks like, that's it, isn't it? Kind of thing.
In a pub with a brew in front of a fire, I'm looking. They'll definitely be bringing that back, or I'd bloody hope they are, because I used to really enjoy that one. I'm sure they will do, but I thought theirs were really good. Similar, very similar, topical. Current, what's going on out there, what they've been up to, a little bit of in-brand stuff as well, producty. What Tackle Guru's up to, what New Fish is up to in their case. I think it's just healthy to.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with dropping a little bit of product in there, and I don't think people would be people would be more disappointed if you didn't, because they think you were avoiding something. But it kind of what it does demonstrate, with the guests and with the topics, is that there is no kind of real competition, amongst these brands. They're all mates. You all sit, you all sit and fish together every weekend.
Yeah.
And there's no animosity whatsoever, and you just invite each other onto each other's podcasts and have a good old natter. And I think I don't know if the audience is surprised by that there's not this kind of partisan behaviour with Guru flags and New Fish flags.
Yeah, I think it's when you've worked in the fishing industry, and you'll know it, Rob. But it's such a tiny place. Like everyone knows
You
everyone.
can't walk past
Yeah,
water without meeting someone you already know, can you? You know,
exactly.
it's such a small world. I always often say that like it's a very family industry. You know, it's nearly like one giant cottage industry, isn't it? Like you've
That's
met
exactly what it
everyone, you
is.
know everyone.
Yeah,
There aren't any ivory towers in angling. Like obviously you're right at the pinnacle of the sport, but you're rubbing shoulders with the regular anglers every day of the week.
yeah.
Um, and obviously, from the fishing point of view, moving away from podcasts slightly, it's still one of the only sports where you can go sit and fish next to a world champion and beat him up at the weekend, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. This is what makes
Um,
fishing good, isn't it? That's magic about our sport. You know, that's what does make it different to
well,
everything else.
obviously, there's a pinnacle, but also it's obtainable from day one. You know, you could go out and get especially with ferry meadows, mate. You know, obviously my stomping ground. You could go get a feeder rod tomorrow, and you can beat up half of the England team on Sunday.
Yeah, you can just
Draw the right peg.
yeah
And
sit next
obviously,
to the ringer and beat him.
yes, sit next to Ringer. We won't remind him of some of the times he has been beaten, but he does very well on there. He does exceptionally well on
Yeah,
there. But at the same time, it's the best of both worlds, because the real challenge for anglers like yourself, anglers that are in the England setup, is over time consistency should win through, and it usually does. It's a great opportunity for somebody to kind of have one good match and draw a good peg and fish a good day. But the England team and the top flight anglers, the challenge is to be consistent over a period of time and maintain that consistency.
100%. That's what I pride myself on. If someone said to you, "What do you pride yourself on the most?" I'd say consistency, like in the team fishing that I do, in the individual fishing, and also alongside consistency with good anglers. I also have a lot of respect for versatility, and I think fishing as a whole offers a great platform as a sport to show versatility. And for me, people who can do lots of different styles across lots of different venues where you need different methods for different species, different baits, that's where I think the best really shine through. For me personally,
Unbelievable.
yeah,
There are some anglers that I just don't know how they do it, Matt.
yeah,
What one that always stands out to me is Lee.
yeah,
Lee Kerry.
perfect
Yeah.
example, Bob.
Um, and not just the versatility, like the guy can win any match on any venue on any method and go do a bit of specimen fishing for fun.
Yeah,
But the amount he does for the sport as well, obviously managing the Barnsley Blacks, running feeder masters, like I don't know how he fits it into a week.
no. Lee's mental, like, honestly. I don't think you get many people like him, but he does it in a really controlled way. And he doesn't get stressed. I'd get too stressed if I were living in Lee World. But he has loads of, he's got loads of really cool personal stuff going on. He plays a bit of golf. He's such a busy-minded person, but he's got this ability to focus when he needs to. So it doesn't matter what's going on. He can sit down on box, or he can do his event or run an event and just be seamless, focus, put all the pieces into place. It must be some sort of OCD, ACD, whatever it is. There's loads of that stuff going on. He's got loads of that, I'm telling you now, but it works for him so well.
I've never, I've known Lee for many years. I've never seen him stressed. I've never seen him look like he wasn't, laid back on a sunbed, to be fair. Absolutely fantastic. But just the perfect example of that versatility, like you say, because it's not like football, is it? In football, you can only kick a ball in so many ways. Angling is completely different in areas of the sport, as in, if you've done one thing, it means it doesn't mean you're automatically entitled to do another. And it's completely different kit, it's completely different environments, tactics, which you yourself are a great demonstration of.
That's what I enjoy about it, mate. I really like the puzzle. It's all there in front of you, and it's down to you to sit down and sort of put the building blocks into place and make it happen, build it up, and try and finish it.
So I think one of the I think one of the videos that really demonstrates that is you catching those barbel on the Trent.
Oh, that was a good one, wasn't it? With a flat float.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, not your normal way of catching big barbel, obviously, but secondly, well out of your usual bag, what people think you are as an angler. But how much you enjoyed that really came across in that film. It was unbelievable. I think it was I would say probably one of the most enjoyable fishing you've done for a while. So, is that how it felt to you?
Yeah, brilliant, Rob. Yeah, I'd love to. If I get any time now, I'm definitely going to go back to that peg and do it again. It's a brilliant bit. It's on Burton Joyce on Ashfield Water and River
Yeah.
Combine. It's deep, close in, so you can fish a pole. And
Yeah.
we do. Not allowed to say do, are you? Too often. We do
No.
quite a lot of that fishing on big rivers in Europe and what have you, Slovakia. Croatia, been to a few places on international events, and it's such an exciting way of fishing. Feeder fishing is great, and that's what a lot of people do for them fish. And obviously, when you get a bite, it's nice and it's exciting. But when you're sat there on a pole, all plugged in, and a flat floats like, and it's whack, and you have. There's it just gets the adrenaline pumping more than
there's something about the pole, isn't there? Like the pole kind of becomes an extension of your body, whereas that feeder rod's just sat on a rest. You're not holding it. You're not even got it in your hand. The pole. You are fully plugged in.
Yeah, unless they snag you on a feeder, if you've got heavy tackle on, you're gonna get them. Whereas on that pole, they can bottom your elastic out, and it just. There's something about
you can feel that elastic tensioning up, and you can kind of feel it charging up. And there's always something on the pole where you shake every second of it. And when it's big fish fishing on the pole, whether it's carp or barbel or whatever else, there's always something where you've always got the shakes because you think it's going to drop off.
Yes.
I remember. I hate to embarrass myself on camera, but I remember fishing for some really big perch on the pole on the river, and I don't know why I didn't use the usual, the standard fare tactics of either using like a quiver tip for them or a lure for them. I was fishing for them on the pole because they were really close in the margins. They were only kind of a couple of yards out, and I thought, well, the best way to present a bait is probably on the pole. But I was fishing really light. I was on like number 5 elastic. And I was pinging casters and fishing dendras. So I was, pinging casters to build them up, and then just dropping some dendrabinas straight through them, strung out so you slow drop. And I was catching these perch, and they were averaging like £2. They were a massive shoal. They're quite local to me, quite famous. You can go there most years and catch decent, good perch.
Yeah.
And then I hit this one, and it just went bang. And all of a sudden I thought, oh, here we go. And I could see it because they were so close in. The water was quite clear. I could see this perch. And to this day, I reckon it was over £4. It's absolutely gigantic. And then all of a sudden, and you know what it's like when you hook them on the pole, Matt? They kind of freeze for a second because they don't know what's going on. They've got this moment where they don't know what's going on because the elastic, the tension, they're expecting something. So they freeze for a couple of seconds. And this thing froze. And then it just went. All of a sudden, this massive £4 plus thing potentially had just gone across the river, and I've never seen an elastic go so far in my life.
Brilliant.
I think it went about 30 yards, and when you feel it bottom out, all of a sudden I'm leaning into the river trying to kind of stop it going, kind of give it a few more yards, and then it just pinged me off. And it's one of them moments, and I had a lot of them when I was younger. And I don't know about you, but when you're young, you want to throw your rods. You want to chuck your rods in. You get so angry about it. But as I've got older, I'm not that bothered about losing fish. You've done enough of it to just realise that's what happens. But that was one of those throwback moments where I had another, I don't even know what to do with myself moment. I was just sat there, and you can't even fish anymore. You just sit on the bank and then pack up and go home. Because this thing was gigantic. But
lifetime £4 perch, mate. Flipping
it's massive, especially in a river. It's not like a still water, but in a river when you've got these perch. But fantastic spot, Matt. We'll have to go sometime when you come over. We'll go down there and catch them. It's on the Welland.
On the Welland.
It's on the Welland, and they're not that hard to find. They're always in roughly the same area every year. So as long as you do a little bit of legwork, you'll find them most years. But fantastic for big perch. And I think perch seem to have been the species of like the last 2 years from a specimen point of view, and probably fishing on natural waters on the rivers and stuff. I think there's been so many perch for some reason, and no one seems to know why.
It's good. I don't think you can beat a big perch either. There seem to always be a few more of them when I were a kid, and then disappeared again, and then all of a sudden, definitely coming back. There's been quite a few on our big northern canals this year, Rob. To be fair,
Yeah.
yeah.
Of course. I've just been up to the Shroppie, obviously, with CRT. We've been doing the Daiwa Global and the national celebration sponsored by yourselves. Sponsored by Guru.
Yeah.
And there's always a few of them having some of these big old jumbo perch, these massive bonus fish. They're catching, plenty of gudgeon and roach and things like that. And then someone will have like a big perch, a big £1 or £2 fish.
Yeah.
Which, you can't get something more exciting for, like an 8-year-old kid. Got an 8-year-old kid on a whip or, a short pole. We've never had a big fish, so to speak. And all of a sudden this £2 perch could take some screaming across the canal and they'll never forget it, Matt.
No, exactly. Can't beat it, mate.
So moving on a little bit, let's talk about what Matt Godfrey's up to at the moment. What's 2025 look like for you? I can't believe I'm saying this, Matt, but we're actually coming to the end of 2025. I'm not sure how it's actually happened, but unbelievable to think. But what's 2025 look like for you in terms of what you've been up to? What do you think what have you achieved this year, and what are you doing at the moment? What are you fishing for?
At the minute, mate, we're coming off the back of an absolutely crazy summer. It starts for me sort of. It never stops, to be fair. We have all the winter leagues finishing sort of February, March time. Then some big silverfish finals in March. Then Census Challenge at the end of March, which this year we needed to win the Census Challenge to qualify for the World Club Champs on the Gloucester Canal, that is, last weekend of March. And we managed to win it with pressure on, 30-odd teams in it.
Yeah.
And we actually come first and second, both our teams. So we had it good. Qualified for that. Then we had the Commercial National in April. So I have a little month where I do some commercial fishing then on the lead up to that. We managed to win the Commercial National. I had a nice match, won my section in that. Missed out the Winter League final, which we also won. That's your neck of the woods, like Decoy, the old Neen at March. So we won that in February. Then May, we go to Ireland for the Classic Festival. That's always great fun, that is there. It's a bit of a Peggy lottery is the Classic, but it's got a big buzz to it. Near on 200 anglers, Lochern, complete unknown, fishing for migratory fish. But you have some great days catching massive roach and hybrids. And you have some terrible ones as well. It's important to say that. But that's always a good trip. June's the European Champs. We went to Slovakia, which was phenomenal. One of the best venues I've ever been to. A massive lake, huge thing connected to the River Drava. And it were awesome fishing. We're all slider fishing for bream, sat in the water, red hot, loads of fish, loads of bites. I had 2 really good days, come second in my section both days. Managed to come 5th individual. And I think the team were 4th or 5th, just missed out on the medals, which were frustrating. But as a team, we probably didn't have it quite right. Then July was World Club Champ. No, July was, World Club Champs with Barnsley. So literally just leapfrogging event to event. We went to Enniscara in Ireland. Great fishing again. Come 4th in that with the Barnsley boys. Again, did really well, but probably didn't have it quite right enough to actually win. Got back from there on like the Tuesday, and on the Saturday flew to Spain with the kids because I managed the under-15s kids team as well. Went to Spain in August, first week of August, and then getting back from Spain, get like a 3-week breather / prep time before we got at World Champs. And then September's World Champs, went to Bosnia, got back from there, and that's when I had a little couple of weeks off fishing, little break. And now we're in the midst of silverfish qualifiers. Love fishing them this time of year on commercials, catching all the roach, skimmers, hybrids, bream. Managed to qualify for one already. I won at Aston last week.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah, and then I went to Boddington on Wednesday this week, come 3rd. Maybe had a chance of winning. I had £23 and Sean Ashby won with 26.
He's a keen old angler, Sean, isn't he? He never does bad, bless him.
He's brilliant, mate. Absolutely brilliant. And And then just got more of that coming up. Fishing our Winter League with Barnsley, like the Angling Trust Winter League. That's great. Like 70 peg matches. Really good venues. We've had a couple on our big northern canals, New Junction and Aaron Calder. I actually caught on Aaron Calder when I come second on the match overall. I had £10 odd. But I actually caught a couple of massive perch on bomb and lobworm. I'd won like £2.5, maybe £3.
Yeah.
Great big one. And then we have a couple of rounds at Allcroft Fishery, which were last weekend. Mint Day had £53 of skimmers.
Nice day of sport, that
great
is.
Fishing, honestly, great fishing, Rob. Like, people always say, what's the best fishing in England? I honestly think like October, November time, commercial silverfish, so good. You just get a million bites off loads of different species. It's highly competitive. And we've got another round there on Sunday. I'm actually going to Moorlands Farm tomorrow on a silverfish qualifier, try and get qualified. And then Sunday we've got another round at Allcroft. So,
yeah, I mean, it's fair. The Winter League's quite, a fast-paced affair these days, isn't it? It comes around so quick, and then it's round. The rounds just seem to be one after the other, and obviously it's challenging. The angling calendar. I don't know what to say, because in one regard, I think as much as possible we need to have as much as we call angling opportunity as possible. But at the same time, it feels like we're running out a calendar year. It nearly feels like you genuinely can't fit anything else into a calendar year now. To be fair.
Well, everything I just reeled off there, I've not even spoke about match this qualifiers, Fishermania qualifiers, Golden Reel qualifiers, Golden Rod qualifiers, Feeder Masters qualifiers. Like, not even talking about Riverfest qualifiers, Canal and River Trust pairs. I'm just talking about the little kind of fishing that I do.
I mean, you're talking your own funnel, but there's so much out there. I mean, there's people that obviously we see quite a few rounds of Feeder Masters, but the people just fish Feeder Masters relentlessly through, for a campaign, the Feeder Masters, and that obviously buys into Feeder King. You got your Golden Reel. There's plenty to do, no matter what niche you want to go down, and I think the temptation is always, which one do I go for to an extent?
Yeah, it is. You got to think, and I think that bit of focus. I mean, I'd love it. I'd love to go fish 400, 500, 600 peg matches on natural venues like we used to, but I just think that fishing's not like that now, and it's never going to be like that again. And lots of people say, I went into Wickersley Angling last week to pick my bait up, and I was speaking to Andy Renton, and he was saying when we, this time of year, 25 years ago, there used to be 120 peg match on the Staney every week. That's what we used to do. Like, where's that gone? And I sort of said to him, them anglers are there's still that same 120 anglers are still a thing, but there's 60 of them gonna fish the Winter League at Allcroft. There's another 10 go to Lindholme. There's 5 go to Aston down the road. There's another 15 go to Bank End now. 3 or 4 of them travel to and they just everything's split up because there's more events. I still think there's a lot of participation, but it is just a lot more spread out. Every hole that's dug and filled with water is a little group of anglers gone from what was a bigger group,
I mean, I think we're always trying to, I don't know if it's just angling or whether this is just humans, Matt, but we're always trying to put things in boxes. Like, we're always looking for one finite answer to everything.
Yeah.
And it's like you say, I don't think, we're always talking. It comes up quite a lot on your podcast, because obviously you're speaking to some of the historical guests and that fish some of these events of the past. And before we came on today, we were talking about old Swinney, Swinscoe fishing.
Yeah.
And we're talking about matches that were into the 100, 400, 500, 600 anglers in some cases, up to 800 anglers.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. But like you say, Matt, much like the rest of the world, there's just more opportunity now. There's different options. Instead of having, if you remember, go back to the carp fishing world, right? When when the boilie first came out, you went into a tackle shop and you just asked for the boilie.
Yeah.
But now there's 200. You go into the shop and there's 200 different flavors and colors and varieties of boilie in 10 different sizes. You can't go back to a day where it was, I wish we just had the boilie. You can't go back. And I think one of the things that we struggle with is people are so obsessed with going back, and you can't do it. why invest so much energy in something that's physically impossible? But what you've got to do is adapt to what's on offer now and support what's on offer now to make it even better. Because if you're always going to be looking with an eye back to the past, you're wasting half an eye on the future.
Totally agree, mate. I don't think that we're ever going back to golden days, as people call it. And I also think that they weren't as good a days as what, people always talk about.
Oh, mate, rose-tinted spectacles, aren't they?
Massively. I speak to loads of the old boys, and they're like, yeah, it were great. We all used to jump on coaches and go down to the Welland, but they don't tell you that out of the 800 people on the match, 350 of them blanked, and another 200 caught less than a pound, and another.
Mate, when you actually look at the results, and I was reading up on some of the historical results last year. I fell down a bit of a rabbit hole on them, kind of thing. And you've got, like you say, like an 800 peg match, and the winner had £3.5.
Shocking.
And you're thinking that don't leave many increments down to place number 800, does it, Matt?
No,
to be honest.
No.
I think they are genuinely rose-tinted spectacles, because those, bearing in mind, a lot of the teams then were like brewery teams, weren't they? So I'm not being funny. They probably really enjoyed the hangover a lot more than the actual fishing, because I think there was they probably can't remember most of how bad the fishing was.
Yeah.
And coming on to something, we'll get a little bit political on this. The nature of fishing has changed, and there are a lot of modern challenges that have made natural water fishing different. And the reason that matches aren't quite so popular although there is a resurgence, there's a lot more of a return to team fishing. But obviously, we've got a lot of modern challenges, and you'll be well aware of these, Matt, from what you do. We've got cormorants, a massive issue on the rivers. Massive issue that which really limits success on the rivers, and we call it bridge fishing these days. If you draw next to a bridge, you might have a good day, and if you don't, you finish. But do you think that's one of the reasons, or do you think it's the reason, or what's your opinion on that?
Obviously, not just on natural venues, Rob. I think, I don't know what it is. I'm just seeing so many more cormorants than ever before. Like, jump in my car and nipped at tackle shop at lunchtime, and I'm like, what's that? And there's 10 of them in Skye driving across Sheffield. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah,
when you pull up to these, we've just had a couple of rounds of our Winter League, like I said, on New Junction Canal, Aaron Calder Canal, and you pull up in the morning, and as you're coming over the bridge and everyone's pulling into car park, you can see them taking off. And they didn't used to be that many. I know they didn't. I'm not stupid. I'm seeing so many more. Sat there fishing at Allcroft on Saturday. We had a practice match for our Winter League. So there's 14 of us on one half of Moat, which is a massive lake. The whole other half's empty. And there's 5 or 6 at a time coming in, just about to land, and then they see us and off they go. This is a commercial fishery.
Yeah.
There's caravans around it, a tackle shop, a bar on site, a footpath round it. It's a busy place. And they're just landing and eating fish, And I think that, or what really commercials and cormorants on commercials has sort of shown me recently what damage they actually do, because there's only a set pool of fish in a commercial, and I've been on matches whereby you sit there in the winter now, and obviously in the winter there's less people going fishing. The fishery's a lot more empty during the week, which means them birds are landing and they're eating. And it's not just the fish they eat, it's what they do in terms of moving the fish and stressing them and scaring them. Because we'll sit down.
I'm glad you've said that, because that's one of the things that most people don't either understand or think about. And it's also one that's quite hard to sell outside the sport of angling.
Of course it is.
Because, when you're trying to kind of take action against these things, and you're not talking about fish that are being killed, which to an extent is already a hard argument, because people go, well, yeah, birds eat fish, mammals eat fish, so what? Like, just because you want to go, we always get this, you anglers just want to go fishing argument, don't you? We're always painted as a very selfish bunch, which I think couldn't be further from the truth, because I think anglers are genuinely about the most invested stakeholder in the kind of water environment, whether it's rivers or lakes or canals or whatever else. I think there's so much time and energy and passion, and obviously coming from the a lot of your fishing, the club world, we're full of volunteers that are investing their own time and money and members' money into habitat projects that don't just benefit fish. They benefit the whole ecology of the river, and all kinds of venues. But when you actually got to take that argument to the next level and say, well, they're not dead, but they're very scared. And someone goes, you want us to take action against a bird because the fish are a bit nervous.
Yeah.
And it's a really difficult argument, isn't it?
It is, but it's only been highlighted because it is worse now than it was. There's been a big change. There are more cormorants on more venues doing more damage to more people because fisheries, livelihood, they pay for fish. If a fox was coming into your farm every night and eating 3 of your chickens, what are you going to do? And then all of a sudden there's more foxes coming, eating more of your chickens. It's that's from a...
I was going to say, and then it's 2 foxes and 3 foxes and 4 foxes. And when it's 5 foxes, and if it was foxes, you'd say to someone at some point, well, how many's too many then?
Exactly.
I've got 0 chickens left. I've now got to shut my farm. You can't have any eggs anymore. All of a sudden, it'd be an issue, and someone would do something about it. And I do feel like it genuinely feels in angling like we're arguing this really tough argument that should be really easy.
Yeah, and personally, I take it personal, right? I went on the New Junction Canal 2 weeks ago at Syke House, and there's 68 people in a line, right, fishing, and 2 people caught some nice roach out of 68. 5 years ago, half the field would have caught £8 plus on that match of roach. Someone had caught some skimmers, some nice chunky perch, right? The same bit of canal now, 68 of us sat there, and all we could catch was little tiny perch and roach, and they were all in the rushes, all close.
Yeah, literally, your float's right up the reeds. You're fishing right into the reeds for essentially blades.
Just loads of tiny fish, no quality fish are there, and there's 2 right at one end of the match length had £15 and £11 of big roach, and that is it. And it wasn't that bad. And there's a load of us going and seeing this change happening, which is why it's an issue. If I remember, my mum and dad lived next to a little fishery called Horseshoe in South Yorkshire, and I remember the owner of that coming and knocking on our door, going, "I've had a cormorant on. I've had a cormorant on." Like that. 20 years ago, couldn't believe that there were one on his lake, and now my dad's they land in it. They're everywhere all the time.
Hundreds, mate, thousands.
Yeah, and no one wants to kill anything, and the birds don't mean to come and eat our lovely skimmers that we want to catch on pellets every week. But we're so passionate as anglers about going and catching fish. We don't want it happening, do we? We just don't want it happening.
No. And, people limit it to thinking, you just want to catch fish every weekend. But we don't, another one of my kind of previous guests said, and this is Martin Bowler, right? So he said angling, and a phrase, I'll never forget this phrase, and I never thought about it kind of in this fashion myself. He said, angling is the gateway to the British Isles. Because we sit there and we watch more of the environment than probably anyone else. Because even if you're an outdoor person, you're either walking or running or surfing or whatever else. We're sat in this stationary shot, getting this ever-moving snapshot of the environment. And we probably see more, and it's not just fish, but deer and birds and animals and, nightlife and whatever else. Whatever form of fishing you do, you are sat watching the world move for hours on end. And because of that, you get this genuine passion for ecology and the environment, even if you don't formally know it as that.
Yeah.
And yes, we want to catch fish every weekend, but we also want to catch them next weekend because we know they're safe. You go, oh, thank God they're still there. The fish species is thriving. It's not just about winning money, is it?
No, it's not. But it is about catching fish for me. I want to go to places that are full of fish. I want to go.
Yeah.
I want to go and have good fishing, and definitely respecting that now. So, because I'm so passionate about what I do, and I've seen the change just in my time, and I'm relatively young compared to, what I bet if you took an average age of the match fishing fraternity. And even I'm like, there's a lot of them about, they're having an effect.
I don't know if we're just supposed to feel old, Matt, because I think we're both still pretty young, but I don't know whether these things are supposed to make us feel old or whether it is truly a sign of how quickly these issues are developing.
Yeah.
Because just like yourself, mate, I consider myself to be still fairly young in the sport, and even in our lifetime, it's been a like night and day change. It's
Yeah.
changed. It's gone from 0 to 100, and you think this isn't right. No ecological change should happen in this time period, especially that people are then going to ignore. That people don't look at it. There should be alarm bells, Matt. We should be ringing the alarm bells and going to DEFCON 3 or whatever. Because it's such a big issue. But there seems to be more obsession with how difficult it is from a PR point of view, which is obviously always challenging for anglers. Always comes down to, you just want to shoot everything, you just want to kill everything. As you said like a few minutes ago, it's not the bird's fault, and we don't want to kill every bird that flies, every cormorant that's there. It's not their fault. They're doing what birds are designed to do. They're moving inland for a reason. They're establishing what was a migratory bird. I won't use the word invasive because it isn't technically invasive, it's migratory. But that migration is becoming, one, bigger every year. Two, it's moving further west every year. Three, they're establishing, kind of local populations as opposed to migrating. It's just a problem that's expanding every single year. And every year we come round to this time of, the Winter League season, we're seeing it in greater and greater numbers.
Yeah, we are. Everyone's talking about it in fishing. It is definitely a problem. I don't know how to deal with it, but obviously, and I don't know where it's going to go. Where does it end? Who's going to sort it out? Does it need to be sorted out? Will it just be left and we'll have lots of cormorants for the rest of the time? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, someone once said to me, this wasn't cormorant specific, but this was more about the state of rivers. Let's just say someone in authority. They worked they worked in a position of authority in angling. Said you're not supposed to have it this good. It's not going to stay this good, and you'll just have to get used to it. And I do think we went through this kind of absolute, halcyon era. You went through this utopian era in kind of the early 2000s, probably 2000 and late noughties to the early tens kind of thing. 2012 always sticks out in my head, when angling was phenomenal everywhere. And I mean, there were British records being broken, specimens everywhere. There were massive fish being caught nearly, and it did feel like there were kind of no challenges to it. We're in this absolute booming industry that was never going to downturn. And I thought, when the guy said it to me, you kind of, maybe again a sign of youth, and you think, nah, it'll be all right. It can't change that quick in my lifetime. But right now, and we're talking 10 years later, not even 10 to 15 years later, that echoes in my head, and I think that's exactly what happened. The massive specimens have obviously struggled with otter predation. Obviously, you're aware of the seal issue around near me, but not seal is a very specific issue. But when you talk about otter predation and you talk about pollution, you talk about cormorants, and that day, when I thought on that day, I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Surely they can't, these fish can't just evaporate. To a certain extent, I would say that what's happened to angling over only a 10 to 12 year period is pretty much an evaporation. We have at such a fast pace that the challenges have increased.
Obviously, I always like to look at both sides of the argument for it as well, though. And I suppose one thing that you have to consider is, have we created more environments for these birds? Because 30 years ago, there were nowhere near as many of these commercial fisheries, these big lakes full of fish, like they weren't there then. And I dare say that even our rivers, I remember as a kid, I grew up round Lincolnshire. My nan and granddad had a caravan there, the Trent. We used to go and fish it. You never catch a lot at all. We used to go on Fosdyke Canal, Trent. If someone caught double figures of fish, 10, 12 pounds, we were like, flipping heck, they've had a good day. Now, you're disappointed if you don't catch £20 pleasure fishing.
Oh, mate, bear it in mind, and I think one of the challenge of the angling audience, Matt, and you'll know this, is that there is an awful lot of people that are very passionate about the sport, but don't really put much kind of power into thinking about it beyond that. They don't do the research. They don't really know the technical detail. And that's without trying to, we're not trying to offend anyone in the audience here or anything, but for most people, it is either just they want to go fishing. Yeah. Or they don't have access to the information, and maybe who's guilty of that? Whose job is it to disseminate the information, Matt? It should be someone should someone be honestly educating the audience more on the technical? Because if you look back to the kind of 80s, if you go back to the kind of 70s, 80s, even reaching into the 90s, there was really not much of a kind of environmental or ecological focus on the way we managed water. Rivers were designed to be long, straight and flat. There was nothing on the banks. There were no cover. There were no bends, nowhere to fish for hide. And it was purely industrial. We were doing it for, efficiency and for cost and for everything else. And obviously, we're in the modern era, when I'd like to think we're more responsible and there's more of a focus on the environment. And we've seen some of the damage we've caused. We're now kind of going back to the state of having to re-manage these rivers at massive cost now. We're putting more, we're rerouting the rivers to more bends in the rivers. We're putting structure in. We're thinking about hinging and pinning trees as opposed to just stumping everything at the bank kind of thing. And it's costing us a lot of money to make up for what we did. Essentially we made these long straight channels out of rivers that are essentially a great big takeoff and landing feeding tube. And like you say, commercial fisheries, we've bred densely populated fish food farms, although we didn't call them that. We've bred it so we could catch a lot of fish. And let's not forget, Matt, that cormorant is just catching a lot of fish. It's just doing something different than you're doing with them. There's a strong argument to be said that at least he's eating them.
Yeah. And maybe it is a cyclic thing, everything it definitely does happen for a reason. And there's more fish about now than ever. Undoubtedly, there's more lakes about now than ever. Guess what? There's more predators now than ever. And we're always going to be in this sway of, here's a great couple of seasons of fish. Oh my God, there's a load of cormorants and it's not as good anymore. And there seems to be less and there's more. And I think that's just where we are probably going to be at, realistically, looking at it from the biggest picture possible. Let's face it, we're not going to have a mass cormorant kill, are we? It's not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen, nor should it. Nor should it, Matt. And I think one of the, the challenge with, Joe Social Media Angler is he just thinks there's going to be this day when we just say, yeah, off you go, boys, just go shoot them all.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing I want, because it would be such a bad thing for the environment and such a bad thing for anglers to be responsible for.
Yeah.
No one wants that. But like you say, if we take the most wide angle lens on this, we are going to go through peaks and troughs. And the wider you pull the lens, the shallower the peak and trough actually is. But it just goes like this, and it always has.
I think that's what we'll get, Rob. I think that's what we'll get.
And all we can do on our kind of narrow point of view is we need to just try and manage what we can in the smallest way to kind of shave the edges off and do the best we can to keep things going.
Yes, we do. And fishing is definitely now better than ever before on most venues. And I dare say, I can speak from a match point of view ridiculously strongly. And obviously I hear and see, and I've always had an interest in wider fishing, specimen carp fishing. Are there bigger carp in England now than ever? Yes. Are there more of them? Yes. Can more people go and do it at more places? Yes. Are there more predators for everything that there's more of? Yes. It kind of all correlates in a way.
It's like you say, Matt. It's narrow and wide, isn't it? Because for some specific anglers, and these are a lot of the people we know and we fish with. But you talk about the Winter League anglers and the old river anglers. There's no arguing it's bad. It's tough. But angling as a whole, like you say, I mean, the carp fishing in England is phenomenal. You can literally go and have a week next week and fish for 60-pounders.
Yeah.
A few years ago, and it really doesn't feel like many years ago in my life, that was a really expensive holiday to France if you could afford it. And in England, you were fishing for about 4, and you had to be on a waiting list for 20 years to get access to one of them.
Yeah.
But these days, we're talking about embryo, obviously. Your sister's over at the Corder group. We're talking about embryo. There's 25 embryo syndicates around the country where you can go sit in a really accessible environment with some really picturesque lakes, and you can catch 40-pounders. And it's not expensive. You're talking less than, a tenner a week in some cases. So in many, many ways, like you say, Matt, fishing's better than it's ever been. We've got more than we've ever got. We've got more resources, more options, more tackle, more venue. So let's not just look at the negative. And I think we're always guilty as people, not just anglers, of focusing on the negative. It's just what people do, isn't it?
It's hard, mate, because we don't want to see loads of big carp getting eaten by otters. We don't want to see loads of roach and skimmers getting chased, eaten, and scared by cormorants. But it's happening. It's going to happen. I don't know what we can do about it. I really don't.
We spoke about it earlier, Matt. Like some of this, yes, there's massive rise in a lot of these problems, but some of it is because we're just better at publishing things.
Yeah.
You know, we're putting spotlights on some things that have happened for decades, donkey's years. Yes, a lot of them have got worse, but also there's so much more media which makes it accessible to anglers to find out things they never knew were happening before. Like we were talking about earlier, you know, you had to used to look through, the Angling Times, the big old paper version, reading the match results and stuff.
Yeah.
Not being funny, but there's 50 of them now at the end of every match on Facebook, Matt. You know, there's 50 blokes at the end of every match publishing the results and the weigh sheets and absolutely everything else. And everyone's giving you their own write-up. You used to get one write-up from a match, Matt, which, when we spoke earlier about, do people actually remember how bad it was? The reason they don't is because the only person you ever heard from was the winner. Because the only story you ever got was in the Angling Times the next week, written by the winner, written about the winner. So you only ever heard the best result. Whereas now, the first person that posts after a match has probably got the shortest pack down time because he blanked. So he's in the car park going, shithole. You know what it's like.
Yeah.
Excusing the language, but you've got from place number 50 up to about 28 has already posted before you even know who's won it to tell you how bad the day was. So the first impression everyone got was how bad the venue was. And then again, take Ferry Meadows for example. You find out that someone's won it with £190 a bream in 5 hours. So it's just a lot more opportunity to get information. And as you well know, Matt, marketing a media man that you are, that can be a very good thing and a very bad thing. I think we've got to take the best of both sides of it. Let's move on from the politics. It always gets a bit heated. This is one of those things that you end up down a funnel on, isn't it? So let's move on from the politics and something you did touch on a little bit in your kind of review of the year. Let's talk about the kids.
Yes.
Kids fishing is such a special thing. It's something obviously that I do a lot of, and it's something you do. You've invested an awful lot of time in. And when we actually when we first spoke about getting together and doing this podcast was of course at Alders Farm this year.
Yeah, it certainly was.
And Alders Farm, great example of kids getting out there and fishing. And obviously we had a chat and said let's have a chat about fishing, not just fishing, but kids and the future and the sport. So tell us a little bit about kids fishing from your point of view, because there's kind of two aspects to it, really. There's the Team England under-15s, and then obviously you've got you've got the Guru Academy. So tell us a little bit about that.
I don't know about you, but I think this year, and we touched on this on our weigh-in earlier this week, I'm sure there's more and more kids going fishing, and I've heard it. The thing that's telling me that it's true and it's happening this year is I've heard it from quite a few different sources in different places, going to fisheries and people going, a lot of young uns coming through this year, quite a few carp fishing, but there's a lot doing a bit of, whip poles, getting into that. Tackle shops, exactly the same, not just one or two, but countrywide, a few different shops and people in the trade saying there's a lot of kids this year. And I think that the last 10 years, we've probably had an active push from a small scale from a lot of different people to increase youth participation in angling. And I think and hope, and I'm pretty confident that it is starting to take an effect now. I really do. I mean, you can't mention everyone who does something, but so many, what you guys do at Peterborough, you've got 3 or 4 different little projects that lean into getting more kids fishing. That's you and your club. Big organisations like Canal and River Trust have got some fantastic stuff going on to get kids into fishing, as have the Angling Trust, as have fishing companies. Tackle Guru, we're taking it on our own back to do things like the Talent Pathway and Match Academy. I think from our point of view, they are a little bit more aspirational. But I feel like as a company, we can shout about that a little bit more. We can put this England under-15s team on a pedestal and go, look, young uns, if you work at it from a young age now, you can be here very soon. You can go to Spain, fish this really cool river in Merida with an England badge on your shirt, and you can be an England international at a young. So hopefully we're doing some inspirational stuff that when they come to a fishing school, when they go to the Canal and River Trust events, when they go to the Angling Trust event, or whoever it is, they've got something to aim at. And the same with Match Academy. You know, we are a team of really seasoned match anglers. All our consultants are professional match fishermen who go match fishing every week. So we can use that as a tool to say, get good at fishing, come on Match Academy, we'll teach you loads of stuff. We've got the best people, we'll hone your skills, we'll make you better, you can win competitions. So the projects that we do are very pinpointed, but I'd like to think quite aspirational for the youngsters. But I'm hoping that at the minute it's working good because there's a lot of people doing a lot to drag people in at the minute. And then we've got the next things in line to really focus them, motivate them, drive them on, give them something to aim for. And I actually think the system as a whole is actually working quite well now in the UK.
I think you're absolutely right, Matt. To be honest, firstly, I completely agree that this year specifically, it just feels like there's more kids fishing.
Yeah.
And it's something I do end to end, not only in my day job. You know, we're supporting with Canal and River Trust. We've obviously attended loads of events. We offer loads of coaching software, things like that. But at Peterborough, like you say, we've got 3 or 4 different kids options to start fishing.
Yeah.
We run we run the School of Fish, which is our kind of online platform to manage kids coaching. We've got over 300 kids signed up for that just at the Peterborough Club. So you can see how much appetite there is. So I completely agree, and I also agree that this is the result of kind of 10 years of work that people have wished and hoped resulted in a good result, like the Canal and River Trust. Obviously, we both know John really well, but Canal and River Trust, angling clubs, the Angling Trust. There's been this kind of hope that eventually this will pop out the other end, and thankfully, I think this year it finally feels like it is. And the same with what you said about Guru. I agree with what you said about Guru. There's only so much one tackle company can do. You can't have a national entry level of angling at Tackle Guru. But what you are offering is that next step, because we have got to have, and one of the challenges, one of the failures, I think, of participation previously is we were great at shoving a whip in their hand for the first day, and then we had no idea how to get them to carry on fishing and how to be an adult angler. And to be fair, I don't think in some cases there was a recognition that we needed to. I think we were patting ourselves on the back because we'd got so many kids to hold a whip for an hour, which I'm never going to knock. Whatever gets them fishing for the first time and catches the first fish is fantastic. But I think we nearly disappointed ourselves and wasted our own effort by then just going, right, we've done it, lads, and off we went kind of thing. Because we got loads of kids to a river or a lake or, all the venues that are taking part in this. We give them a whip for an hour and essentially we taught them to hold this stick and lift it when it moves. And they've got really excited over catching their first bleak or gudgeon or roach or, whatever, a little perch. But then we went, well done, you're an angler. And off they went. And then never fished again because, they didn't know how to go on their own. They didn't know what to buy. Mum and dad don't fish. So unless you've put in on some more sessions, that was the last time they ever fished. And some of them might budge their way into the sport eventually. But things like the Guru Academy and the structure you've got to then go into the England under-15s, it means that you can look and go, right, those guys at Guru, people like Matt Godfrey, if you want to be that, this is where you can go. There is this very simple structure to say when you've done your entry-level fishing and when you are confident doing a little bit of fishing by yourself and you can do your rigs and then, and we've moved it on a little bit. We've gone from that catching your first fish at 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. Now we've got them to 12 and 13. And the next stage is, okay, well, we've got another half towards being an adult angler. What's the next half? That's when they come into your bag, so to speak. So obviously, Team England under-15s this year. You've managed them for how many years is it now? Is it the second year you've been doing it?
I think we've done it for 5 or 6 years now.
5 or 6 yourself.
Yeah.
I didn't realise you'd been doing it yourself for that long.
5 world champs we've done with them, yeah, and obviously missed
Oh,
the year
wow.
of COVID, yeah. Quite a while
Yeah,
now.
kind of everything was a bit of a blank during COVID, wasn't it? Like it's hard. It's hard now to look back and imagine that actually happened.
Mental. Got some rigs right at that time. I did.
Oh, mate, I still picture it. You know, I still can't believe we stood there watching people queued up like 200 deep round a supermarket car park being let in one at a time. Crackers. But it did kind of turn the world on its head, and the calendar feels like it's set on fire at some point. So I don't really know what happened for the 3 years. So under 15s this year, how did it go? I've seen the results, but give us your opinion on how it went this year.
Oh, it was brilliant, mate. I've never been. We went to Merida in Spain. Yeah, fishing there is always phenomenal. The climate's hot, so fish breed like mad. River Guadiana, it was called, and it was fantastic fishing. Millions of little fish. It were all whip fishing for little carassios, dead technical. They really, in 3 hours, they needed to catch 800 fish in 3 hours to compete. And
I mean, that's a good rate for any angler, Matt.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, 6 to 8 a minute was what you were aiming to catch. And our lads were good. They were very good. All honesty, and I'm talking England level here, they came fourth, and ability-wise, as a team, they probably were about fourth out of the 10 teams, you know. Italy won. They were fantastic. They got some big young anglers, strong, fished for these catfish that, you know, if our lot couldn't fish for them, scared of picking them up, these spiky things, spiked you, not used to it. A little bit like if you probably brought them to England and they had to catch a load of F1s, our lads would probably be so much more aggressive with them, you know. So it were a good result, and they did really, really well to come fourth. It's always, on any international event, what makes it so prestigious is the fact that only the top 3 get a medal. And so fourth's the worst place to come. We've come fourth in the world.
I think it's I think it's really important message that we forgot for a while, and this harkens back to the conversation we had about kind of how common sense seems to have returned a little bit. Not everyone can win, Matt.
No, they can't, mate. Which is what makes those events so special. Is that it's such a push and an effort to try and get into them top 3 places, that it is gutting when they don't, and the kids are gutted when they don't.
But next year you'll want it twice as much. 100%. You know, next year you'll have learned something and seen something. Next year you'll want it twice as much, and you know exactly what you need to do it. And I often say, like, whether it's your fishing or anything else in life, you learn more from failure than success.
100%.
Because if you're successful, you know, you have a celebration, you lay back and congratulate yourself on how good you were, and then you move on. And if you fail, you really focus on what the challenges were, and you really focus on who fished better than you, who did something better than you, and you're so targeted towards not doing it again. There's so much more opportunity in failure than success, and I think you need to, you know, the word opportunity is a great word to use. And when you say to someone you didn't lose, you gained an opportunity, is a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And at the age group you're talking as well, like you say, there was some real kind of big, strong kids fishing. There is a physicality to angling, which I think people miss. Massive. You know, I think people think that, you know, you're sat on your backside fishing and there's nothing to do with how physically fit you are. But especially at those ages, you know, when kids are growing in so many different ways, you know, some of them are, you know, much bigger, some are smaller, they've had growth spurts, things like that. When it comes to both speed and strength, and especially when you're big fish fishing, you know, if you were fishing for big carp or caps, you know, like you say, catfish, there is a physicality and a stamina required to do that for a whole match that people don't realise.
Yeah, 100%. And I tell the kids when they first come through to the pathway, you know, it isn't a case of, if you are a big, strong lad, we're going to pick you, because there's loads of small lasses that are athletically brilliant for fishing as well. But it's more of the being able to do it, being fit, being healthy, making sure you've got a good night's sleep. Even
psychological as well, Matt. It's not just the physical. It's not just being big and strong, is it? There's obviously, it's not just big and strong. There's also stamina involved, but there's also psychological stamina. To keep that focused for a full match is a challenge for young anglers.
You try catching 8 fish a minute for 3 hours solid and maintaining that. a fully grown, super focused England international, that's not easy for. And trying to get kids that are less than 15 years old to do that in 42, 44 degree heat in Spain, you need to be a certain kind of person if you're going to do that effectively. But I'm quite brutal with the kids, and so is James Dent, who helps me manage it. And we're picking who we believe are the 5 best under 15s in the country. So we're going to be firm with them. We picked you because we think you're the best, and we're going to try our very best to push you over that line and get you a medal. That's our job for that week. So
the team managers, you're there to pick a winning team. You're not there to pick 5 people to make them happy.
No.
Although you kind of hope that's the result, but you're there to pick a winning team.
They realise it as well, Rob. Obviously, the year before we won a gold medal in Serbia. And when you stand on stage, national anthem's playing, medal round your neck, and everyone's singing national anthem while you stood there, that's what you're doing for.
There's no better feeling, is there?
When you're in 4th place and you have to watch another 3 teams go up on stage and do that, that's when I see it. I've done it for long enough now. I'm 20 odd years into international fishing. But when I make a point of saying, like this year, the team, they were all lads this year, they sat there behind us, and I turned around and I've gone, listen, lads, so that the presentation's about to start. This is why we've been pushing you so hard this week. Watch this. And then presentation starts and they watch the winners go up, and you can see in their eyes at that point, I wish I could show the team that presentation on the Sunday night before we go, rather than them having to watch it on the Sunday night when it's all over, because that's when it hits home hard. When they see them winners get up after a week of real relentless effort, I just think that's why international fishing is so special. You don't get any more effort equals reward in fishing than that style, in my opinion.
No, not at all. It's just the most obvious way of realizing that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
And you can't replicate that at home, can you? Like, you can't replicate that on a coaching session or a training session or anything else. There will never be any way to replicate a podium and being at the top of it with a gold medal hanging around your neck.
100% not.
So coming back to the juniors a little bit, obviously, you guys have supported the national celebration for Canal and River Trust. Record-breaking numbers on that this year. It was, over 500 people signed up for the first time. Given there's always a few dropouts, we were talking into the high 400s on the weekend. Unbelievable. Followed, just this weekend gone by the Daiwa Global on the same venue on the Shroppie. And this is a similar match, but to represent nationalities from around the world that are kind of represented through UK angling. 200 and I think in attendance 250 from 41 different national backgrounds, all in the UK.
Yeah, great.
Unbelievable.
Picture of all the kids with all the different flags. How good is that?
The flags, yeah. Yeah, I actually took that picture, Matt.
Oh, there you go. I didn't even know that.
No, I get everywhere.
They were a little bit out of focus.
Yeah, I thought so too, mate. It was terrible, but that's what you get, what you pay for, mate. You just don't pay me enough to. But obviously these two, and especially for Canal and River Trust and John Ellis and his team and what they do, are a pinnacle. And people see these and they think it's the only event of the year, but these are the pinnacle of a whole another year worth of effort and hundreds of regional events and hundreds of Let's Fish events and Get Fishing events with the Angling Trust, where you've got maybe 10, 20, 30 kids all locally helped by their clubs that are all volunteering their time. And to stand on, the famous bridge on the Shroppie, you got Bridge 51 on the Shroppie when you're looking down the canal. At the honesty box, you're staring down the canal and see this unbroken, empty line of kids. This unbroken canal where you've got kids and families as far as the eye can see, and you think that's what we do it for. That's what all the volunteer hours, all of the time, the investment, the money. That's why Clubmate supports it as a business. And you can look at it how you like. It's really satisfying to see kids fishing. It's great for the future of the sport. It's great to see people using the canal network and the river networks. It's great for business. It's great for people like Guru to think, God, we are still going to have some customers next year. You know, the audiences, because we're always this scaremongering, Matt, that, angling's an elderly sport. Everyone's 50, 60, 70 years old, and you hear it all the time, Matt. But you look at that and you think, God, there's a lot of an audience left here. There's a growing audience, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids. And I think we are responsible for bringing them together. It's people such as yourself. It's the people that move angling. It's yourselves, ourselves as a business, everyone. We're the ones that are letting it down. It's not the kids. It's us that need to make the most of that. And we're doing it now. I think we're doing it now better than we've ever done. But we need to make the most of that and really give them a reason to fish instead of doing other things, or as well as doing other things.
Yeah, I think what we're doing better than ever, and what the Canal and River Trust are doing with, is it Let's Fish and all that side of stuff, like they're doing it brilliantly now, because they are not just going, here's a whip, have a fish, see you later. They're going, here's a whip, have a fish. If you like it, you want to come back on this event. And they make stuff family orientated. They run family style events, and they've got the come back to this one. Like, I think they've done something this year whereby go to the first event. If you come back to the next one, you can keep the stuff we're going to give you for the next event.
Yeah.
They are not only getting people there, they are keeping them in fishing. And it's hard when you've got a taste for it, as we all know, from back when we started, to get out of it. But just that, they've got the knack now, what the Canal and River Trust are doing, of not just getting them, but keeping them and showing them what's next. And
I think everyone's kind of learnt the same lesson. Everyone's, to one extent or another, we've all made the same mistake. And now everyone, Canal and River Trust, fantastic example, because you can literally put the dots on the calendar. You can go from this event to that event to that event to the big national one at the end of the year. But everyone, even at my own club, we've recognised that had to be the way, that we had to have this structured way of getting them to come back again until they do fly, until they do fly the nest on their own, and you're the proud mum sat there watching them fly away on their own kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you've got your first session, which is so accessible, you don't need to worry about it. You just turn up and go, here you go, kid, catch a few fish, great. Oh, did you enjoy yourself? Come back next week to a skills session or a squad session or whatever else. Oh, right, so you've really enjoyed a couple of squad sessions. Do you fancy fishing your first competition then? You fish a regional match. You fish a little regional match against kids from down the road or the next town over, and there's probably 15 to 20, 30 kids. You go, oh, God, you did quite well there, didn't you? Really enjoyed yourself. Great day out with everyone. Do you fancy doing a national one? And then you go to the national celebration, the Daiwa Global, or junior national. You've got all these opportunities, and it sounds really simple. And I'm not being funny, Matt. That's not a long pipeline. We're not talking this really complex model. We're talking you've gone from first time to a few weekly kind of club. And I think this is what we're missing. You can go to football club every week. You can go to cricket club every week. You can go to scouts every week. We've never really had it in angling. There is no fishing club. There wasn't a fishing club that you turn up to like you do for a school club or a football club.
Yeah.
And now there is. Now we've got academies, we've got clubs, we've got all kinds. Talent pathway. We've got all these things that become a regular activity for kids. Because I think the problem is when fishing, and we didn't really know what we was doing. We got this one session every 3 months. And then people do 10 more football sessions. When it comes to the next angling one, not just the kid, but mum and dad's going, God, well, I'm not spending another bloody load of money on fishing tackle when you're going to do it once every 3 months kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, mate, you're a passionate angler. You realise that when you actually get hooked on it, it's for life. When you actually give someone the opportunity to do it 2 or 3 times in a row, or every 2 or 3 times in a month, that's them for life then. They're fishing for the rest of their life. And I've seen it so many times in the last year.
Yeah, it's working, mate. It's working 100%. And it's only going to get better and better, hopefully, now. I think that, we've realised what we need to do. And I also think, I always like to take a step back and go big picture. 500 kids registered on Canal and River Trust's event. That can't be every kid, but even if it was, it's nowhere near enough to keep a trade going. If you said, here's
No.
500 kids for the next 10 years to keep the angling trade afloat, it's not going to happen. It's not enough. But fishing's not like that. And the older I get and the more I see it and the more people I speak to on different levels, fishing isn't a sport where people only come into it as a kid. Of course, it is fantastic to have that youngster coming in because you probably got them for a long period of time and fingers crossed all the life then. But loads of people come into angling at teenage level because the mates are doing it, and then they come into angling in the 20s, late 20s, when they've got going out with the mates, drinking and chasing women about. They come into it after that little stage, and then there's another group of anglers that start fishing again around late 30s, early 40s, when they've had kids young, the kids are growing up, and maybe the kids want to go fishing, so guess what? So does parents, or kids leave home. And
I think at that time you kind of settled into your life a bit, haven't you? You've kind of you know what your career is. You're not flying from one kind of job to the next or the next promotion. You've settled into a routine, and you think, right, what can I do now? I can have a bit of time to myself again.
My dad is the perfect example, and it's kind of the one that's really made me realise it in the last couple of years. Is my dad went fishing as a youngster, then he never went fishing for himself at all from me being 8 to 3 years ago. I'm not at home. My sister's not at home. He's winding down at work, and they've got a caravan, and he goes fishing on a lake down there on a Saturday in a match, and he goes on the River Trent on Sunday in a match. And my dad's not been in tackle shops, buying his own bait, buying his own tackle, talking about fishing, watching films on fishing. He's not done that for 40 years. And he's doing it now at 63. Like, he's always been an angler. He's always had a license every year. He's always gone fishing 3 times a year. But now, between March and October, he is a massive contributor.
Yeah. So he's gone from fishing 3 times a year back to being an angler at 63 years old, kind of thing.
2 times a week. 2 times a week, 6 months of the year. Like, at 63, how many of my dads are out there? That's why fishing is okay and will be okay, and we are all right as an industry, because it's not about, it's massively about the 500 kids at the National Celebration of Anglers, and the same at whatever Angling Trust are doing, and the same it is about all them, really importantly, because they are at the start, and if we can keep them, that's great. But there are so many more feeding streams into new anglers coming into our sport that.
Well, there's never a time that you can't, is there? From the day you're born to the day you die, you can nearly go fishing, Matt.
Talked about that much since I've been 5. All I've heard on the bank is no kids are coming into fishing. This industry is going to be knackered, and it's same now as when I come into it 30 years ago. It's great. Loads of people go fishing. Loads of matches spread out everywhere, new venues, tackle companies are doing all right, venues are doing all right. It's good. Yeah. We're going to be all right. And it's only recently have I realised how many different people come in at different times, and the kids at the bottom are really, really important, and always have been and always will be. But there's lots of other times when people come into our sport.
I mean, how much do you see on the match scene, Matt? In the Winter League or even throughout the year, where there's like 5 or 10 new faces. Obviously, there's a lot. We see the same people all the time, and it's like a great big social every weekend when we see everyone. But you always see like 5 or 10 new people. They weren't born at 40 years old, were they? They didn't just materialise at 40, 50 years old. They've all of a sudden they've bought a pole or a feeder rod, or they've been club fishing for years and gone, I fancy having a go at one of the bigger matches.
Yeah.
And it's a never-ending funnel, Matt. Like you say, there is streams in from every direction, and it is a sport. Again, harkening back to something like football, if you're not a professional by the time you've reached 20, you're not going to be. Your career. I don't want to say career's over, but if you're not on that pipeline by your early 20s, that pipeline's not going to exist for you, and you aren't going to be competing at any level once you're kind of into your late 30s and 40s. You're not going to be at any sort of level. But in angling, you could start then. You could pick up a rod for a first time at 40, and you could be competing with the best in the world by the time you're 42.
Exactly.
You know,
It's
and
different.
and it's never going to. And on top of the fact that you can start it at any time, we're always going to have water, Matt. You know,
Yeah.
while we've still got water and we've still got rivers and lakes and canals, there will still be fish. And while there's fish, there will still be anglers.
Yeah.
And touching on the business, like you said, with the tackle companies, Matt, and obviously this is a key part of what you do. This is your day-to-day job, really, is the success of Tackle Guru. There's more companies now than there's ever been, Matt. You know, there's more opportunity, there's more businesses, more brands. You know, they're all paying somehow, Matt. You know, they're all paying everyone somehow. So,
Yeah.
I mean, could they have done that 40 years ago? You know, could we have had a Tackle Guru and a New Fish and a Maver and a Census? And, you know, could we have had all of these brands 40 years ago? Probably not, because I think everyone was just buying the same thing. It was cheap and easy and all the rest of it. And that creates its own thing, doesn't it? You know, the competition always breeds success. I've always been a big fan of kind of, you know, capitalism, Matt. You know, I've always been a fan of competition because it drives success and it drives new things and new change and new products. You look at some of the stuff that Guru's done for the tackle market, and not just Guru, but Corda, obviously. The whole group has got this mindset. And I think obviously probably started with Danny. You know, I think Danny's the big driver in that, is, you know, this passion for fishing. And I don't know if you remember, when we filmed Underwater 2, and Danny came down and he was obsessed with how that feeder was moving through the air.
Yeah.
And obviously, me, you, and Ringo are just sat there, and it's just like, well, yeah, that's what a feeder does. That's what we do, kind of thing. And within about a minute of arriving, Danny's looking at how that feeder moves through the air and said, "That's rubbish." You know, it's such an inefficient way that it, you know, moves through the air. And that trickle down from where Danny started, obviously, has trickled through the whole ethos of the business into driving new products that make a real difference to your fishing. You know, really change the efficiency of what you do. And Guru has launched so many new products that have made a big difference to the industry. I mean, you've launched some great new products this year. What have you launched this year, Matt?
All sorts, mate. We've had quite a lot of one of the things that have been really popular for us are them starter kit style things.
Yeah.
They're a little bit like, you know, we've done some A-class whips and what have you in the past, which are still available, you know, tenner to 15 quid with a pole rig, get people into it. But little bit like, I think what we can do is, by the same token, we're talking about keeping people, moving them on, keeping them interested, helping them catch more fish in the process. We've done quite a lot of like next step up starter kits, 100 quid mark, bit of a nicer rod and reel with a right line on, with some good education on how to use it. And they've gone down a right treat this year.
It's not just the process, is it? It's the cost. We're in a tight world, Matt. You know, the world's an expensive place these days. So it's not as easy as it used to be to kind of buy this kit. And when you tell mum and dad, like, I really enjoy fishing, and then you go, oh, bloody hell, well, how much is that going to be? Those kits, and like you say, the A-class range is awesome. We bought loads of A-class stuff for our kids for the coaching, but it was good by accident. It wasn't designed for kids. I don't mean it was good by accident. It's good kit, but it wasn't designed to be good for kids. It was just a very affordable entry-level range that worked for the job. But you've got them starter kits now where you can buy a rod and a reel and, you know, feed a rod and reel, float rod and reel, you know, whip and a rig and, you know, these kind of things. And it's just like the stuff we used to buy that was rubbish, but it actually works. You know, it's like the old starter kit that you used to buy, but it broke after about 10 seconds. You know, as soon as you hooked anything bigger than a gudgeon, it snapped in half, kind of thing. And the line was, you know, pigtail kind of coily line kind of things like that. And Guru are one of the companies that have really just put out these starter kits that are just maybe that next step up. And you're talking going up to 100 quid for a rod, reel, and everything else. And but it's good kit, and you could keep that kit for the rest of your life. You know, you could go fish your first match with that kit and win it. But perfect for a kid, you know, in good sizes and things like that. So great work by Guru, I think, to be honest. Absolutely fantastic.
They're the ones that we're probably most proud of, mate. Obviously, we've just brought out some 10 quid sliders and wagglers that are high end. You know, for us to use on world championships, and that's what's good about the brand, is you got this mix of interest from bringing people in and keeping them by product to also providing the right stuff for the very best anglers in the world to use on the international stage. And I think that that's what people like Rune are brilliant at and most proud of about his brand is that he can do that, and it's all done for a reason. The product's good, it's done for a reason, and it helps people catch more fish.
I think one of the challenges in any business is sitting there and there's a famous thing about kind of just because you can do it, should you do it? And you sit there at the end, at the start of every product development, and think, why do we want this? What problem are we trying to solve? And it's very difficult as a business to be all things to all people. And I think Guru are doing a fantastic job of being all things to all anglers. You've got that right entry level, and we spoke about the A-class gear. But if you can stand there this year, and I think, was it this year they were released, but you sat there with an A-class whip with a rig for about 12 quid, and then you've got an Aventus whip.
Yeah.
That are completely different bits of kit that to the general public think we're insane because they do the same thing.
Yeah.
But completely different ends of the scale. And, if you're holding an A-class whip and you've never held another whip, it's fantastic. But then you put an Aventus in their hand, and you think, Jesus, it's a completely different thing, isn't it? Like,
great example, Rob. Great example. You can have this A-class one for $9.99 with a rig that you hook on, you're fishing in seconds, and you know what? It does a great job. You'll catch some fish on it. And by the way, this speed whip, it's 120 quid. You'll never find one that's lighter, crisper, better. It's got interchangeable flick tips. It's got a rotating Dacron on the end. We used them in World Championships for catching bleak and brassy. Like, that's the beauty of the brand, and what Rune's happy to do with it is he wants to be the best at all levels, but most importantly at all levels help people catch more fish with what we're doing. That's the sort of going along with that ethos. We can't really go wrong as long as we keep achieving that.
No, I mean, if your aim is to help anglers, no matter what the level, you'll always win, because anglers, essentially, when you walk into the tackle shop, Matt, and let's stray into the argument about tackle shops. There ain't many of them. They're struggling a little bit. But when you walk into the tackle shop, what you're actually doing is looking for help to go catch fish.
Yeah.
Which I think is something that's, in the we'll touch on it a little bit, but in the decline of the independent tackle shop, when you've lost so many tackle shops, that's what you've missed. This is what we're missing when, tackle shops become, when it's an online tackle shop or tackle shops become more of a kind of retail job, you're missing that help to go fishing, which is one of the really important parts of the tackle trade.
Yeah, it's an hard one, the tackle shop sort of debate, because we've had a couple of years where there's a lot of talk about shops shutting, but again, I think this year it's sort of flattened out a little bit. I don't know if it's just my area or from what I'm seeing or hearing, and I can only talk on the vibes I'm getting, but feel like there's less and less shutting, and we're left now with what is a decent core.
I don't disagree with you, Matt, and to an extent, and this is not meant to disparage anyone, but the ones that are working, and the reason it's slowed down a little bit is because the ones that are there have adapted to the environment.
That's it. That's it.
The ones that lost out never went online, had no social presence, weren't talking to people, couldn't adapt to offers, doing promotional materials and things like that. Didn't adapt to new types of fishing, new audiences, and not in all cases, but certainly in some. But the ones that are there now, there is this independent, and it is leveled out. I won't say that it's on the rise, but it's leveled out. So there are some really successful independents that are driving. Driving. Obviously, we spoke about Alex Bates earlier. Tackle and Bates over at Rookery, fantastic.
Perfect example. Adapted to the times, super active, business minded, great on socials. He's present, good location on the fishery. He's got a fishing team named after his. Trying really hard. And it's working.
But he's hitting all those avenues, though, isn't he? Like, he's got a podcast. He's got a social media presence himself. He's got a big following. He's got a shop full of gear that people want. He's got match teams. He runs events. He's doing obviously they've just started moving into the junior scene themselves. And all fantastic stuff. And Alex is a great, great asset to the sport. But at the same time, let's not forget that a certain amount of that is because he knows it's good for the business. Yeah. I'm not saying that's the primary driver, but all of those things have brought business in there. So that's that's probably why that's improved slightly. So I mean, Tackle World, let's see. Obviously, it's quite contingent on Tackle Guru being successful, as that people carry on buying tackle.
Yeah.
And as we've said, I think there's a great opportunity. So let's turn the conversation to the future, Matt. So a couple of aspects of the future for you. So what's in the short term and next year for Matt Godfrey, and what's going on with Guru? What are you going to be doing with Guru for the next year?
Flipping heck, Rob, it's exciting for me. I've got a little baby coming very soon, So, like, personally, that's going to be a big change for me. Got a little.
It's going to turn the world around for you a bit, Matt, isn't it? It's going to change things a little.
Yeah, if I don't like it, I'll just have to get it on black market, I think. But if it's all right,
yeah,
holder it,
Trade it in, mate.
Yeah. So, anyone who's listening who fancies some babysitting duties around Friday evening, Saturdays and Sundays, that'd be great. Drop me a message. No, got a little girl coming literally imminently. My missus has got the fattest belly you've ever seen. And any minute now, I've got my phone on loud all the time now because it could happen at any point. So really excited and looking forward to that. Something totally different. Work-wise, just trying to drive it forward with Guru. I've got an events meeting tomorrow. Going to see what we can do next year. We'll just try and move everything on a step further. And all that sits in line with products. We've got the next generation of pretty much everything we're doing coming in the future. Rods, poles, loads of expansion still to do with Guru. We'd like to look at Europe a little bit more, which is always difficult. And then fishing-wise, just want to keep doing what I am doing at the minute and try and learn and expand. Obviously, things like the England team, tech priority for me. That's what I want to do. I want to fish international events. I want to win more international medals. Really proud of that. And while ever I can and feel like I'm good enough to have that England badge over my heart, I will push and try and do it.
Is that the primary one for you, Matt? Is it still like number one in your fishing is the international scene? Fishing for your country. Is fishing for England still the most important thing in your fishing?
Yeah, it's the thing that I love, but, it frustrates me, stresses me the most. But it's what I want to do. I don't think that there's not a lot of people can do it. So, and I'm in a position where I can, I base a lot of my life around doing it, and I just want to do as well as I can at it for as long as I can. That's.
I kind of think you hear it from. I've seen it from nearly every member of the England team, whether it is Steve Ringer or any of the England setup, and they all say. And to be entirely honest, Matt, it's not the most lucrative part of angling, is it? It's not the one that's going to make you a millionaire fishing for England. But they all say, I've never seen any of them that don't say this would be the thing I'd choose on top of all others. I'd fish for England before, I'd give up the domestic competitions. Fishing for England is the pinnacle of achievement. Maybe that's just like other sports, fishing for your country is the ultimate goal, but I've never heard one angler say that fishing for England wasn't more important than every other part of the sport. So it's really interesting. Obviously, we did have another chat earlier, Matt, before we started the podcast about the international scene. It's a really interesting conversation, isn't it? Because we really struggle to develop a kind of funnel into international fishing for anglers in the UK.
Yeah, there's not one in place, Rob, really. I mean, if someone wanted to fish for England now, so, I don't know, let's say Rob Swan, for example. If Rob Swan wanted to fish for England now, great, young angler, obviously does well at a lot of different things, mainly commercial based. But if he wanted to fish for England now, it'd be a case of he'd have to pick the phone up to some England team members, the England manager, and say, look, I'm interested, I want to come along, I want to be involved. And that's the same for anyone. He wouldn't want to. He doesn't want to do that. I think if people that are on the periphery of it and could do it, what I'm definitely not saying here is people like that can't do it, because people like that are the only real people that can. If Andy Bennett, Jamie Hughes, Brad Lucas and Christian Jones.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there's always this discussion, like the guys that win, compete at the top level at Fisho and things like that. And people say, well, it's so different to international fishing. But there's no doubt at all they're good anglers. And if they chose to do any angling, they'd be good at it. But there's two, I think there's two conversations. One, it can be very lucrative fishing commercial angling competitions. You know, there's a lot of really obvious monetary return. You know, you can make a living from fishing domestically as opposed to internationally. And number two, we have no structure. As you said, Matt, there is no entry point into it other than pick the phone up and say, how do I get involved? You know, how could I go fish for England? There is no grassroots structure. And we have no domestic scene that fishes that kind of tactics on those kind of rules, FIPS rules kind of thing. So it's so limited, the opportunity to do that kind of fishing and prove that you could compete. So what are your thoughts on that, Matt?
I'd love to see more of it, Rob. Obviously, the Census Challenge is probably the only international rules event that we have in England, which is a sellout, 35 teams every year, and it's fantastic. We spoke about it at the start of this podcast. I'd love to see more of that. But I think that what we will see in the future is maybe some changes in the England system, management, and that will bring, hopefully, some changes into more international stuff happening. And there is a little bit more of the crossover happening in terms of, the young England lads have just been over to Holland last week to fish against Belgium, France and the Dutch team, which is great. And that's coming to England in 2027 for the youth system. We run the Pathway, which is international fishing for youngsters, the under-15s is. So I'd like to see a little bit more of the international focus on some events in the UK. And I do believe and feel like that is going to happen in the next couple of years. I really do think so. But I think that'll come with probably changes in the management system, probably changes in team selection. I think it's important that if people want to have a go at it, they can. And I'd like to see something in place where they can throw the hat in the ring a little bit more. I only refer to the Andy Bennett, Jamie Hughes, Christian Jones because a lot of social media is put Andy Bennett in the England team. You know what? He probably would, but he wouldn't be able to be in the England team and go and fish a load of qualifiers, win Fishermania, qualify for Match This.
No, you couldn't do both.
The reason that Will Raisin, Cameron Hughes, Lee Kerry, myself, James Dent don't go on all them in the summer because, like I said to you, May until September, I'm not in England. I'm fishing abroad.
No. There's so many examples of it where people say, oh, well, why don't you fish this competition? Why don't you fish that competition? People like yourself, you'd love to go fish some of the domestic competitions and add a title to your crown and, obviously be big on the UK scene. But you'd probably, as we spoke about earlier, you don't even hear about a lot of the international duty stuff. You see the odd post on social media, stuff put out by yourselves or the Angling Trust. And many anglers sit there and go, I didn't even know it was a world champs. I didn't even realise it was happening. So I think we're guilty of not having that. I think we should. That's an area we can improve. Is kind of selling the international fishing. That
will come, Mark, if the England team get a sponsor. I thought what Drennan did with a feeder team this year was really good coverage. They went across, they covered it. The team won, which was great as well. They've not won for 10 years. And the first year Drennan have gone to give it the big one with coverage. They won, which is great. Yeah. That's what we need.
Had that kind of great modern kind of vlogging style where it really felt like you were there with them kind of thing. And I think it's chicken and egg. I think one will be, I don't know which one comes first, but the coverage will improve so you'll get more interest or, we'll get more interest and then the coverage will improve. But I think you're right. I think we're on a natural journey where that'll improve. But it's obviously been something that has been a challenge over the last few years, last decade. It's been a challenge because the rest of the world's caught up to an extent. As we've spoken about before, Matt, there used to be that the UK angling scene probably had the most money in it, the most investment, the most events, and we were clearly by quite a distance probably the most developed angling kind of scene. But the rest of the world has caught up. A lot of the European nations, as we spoke about earlier, have caught up, and it's now we're in the pack, which is great. It's great to compete because you don't want to always feel like you won because you weren't in the same sport as everyone else. Yeah. It's fantastic, and it will drive us to be even better. But I do think we're on that natural progression, but thankfully solving the challenge.
Yeah, I hope so. And like I said, I really do think we are. We've got some good young uns in the pipeline. I think there'll be some changes in the future that will drive it forward even more. And yeah, I think we'll be in a good place in another 3 to 5 years. The team feels good. I've been in the team of Fish for England since I'm 14 years old, every single year on World Championships of some sort now. And there's been times where it's been great, times where it's not so great. And at the minute, it feels like it's on a good, steady build. We've got a good team. We've got some youngsters in the team. When I say youngsters, I'm talking 30-year-olds. They're not young. But then we've also got a little set of them just behind us that are ready to step in as and when needed. And I do think that it's in a good place.
Yeah, I mean, great to see. And I think as a whole, Matt, ignoring some of the challenges we've spoken about today, I think the sport's in a good place. All you've got to do is flick on YouTube or look on social media. There's so much activity and buzz and excitement around angling that no matter what challenges we've got, and we can really be guilty again as people, not anglers, but people, of focusing on problems. But if you actually look at that wide angle of angling, I think there's a really exciting few years to come, Matt. I think we're in a really exciting time and there's loads of good stuff going on. I think some of the successes we've spoken about today are only going to keep on improving.
Yeah, me too, mate. It feels good at minute. I don't know what it is, but in every little area, it does feel like it's good. We're doing well. And I think we've got to keep moving forward, stick together, try and all be positive wherever we can, try and push people to get into it, have a go wherever we get any opportunities to do that. And also that all important thing of tell them what's next, tell them what else is out there to keep them in it. That's the thing that I think we've all learned recently is the key. And it sounds simple, but I reckon in years gone by, we've probably not done enough of that. Like you sort of summed it up, we've done enough of saying, here's a whip, have a go, there you go, see you later. But I think now, with the media, with the content, with the events, and us knowing it a little bit better as a industry, we can keep hold of them a bit more when they come and have a go, whatever age they're at.
It's what we do for a business, Matt. Obviously the software we provide at Clubmate provides these platforms where you've not just got someone turns up and they had the name on a bit of paper. You've signed them up and then you can communicate with them and you can get them to book into events. And then when they've attended that event, you can automatically follow up with a kind of email to say, this is what you do next, or have you got any questions? Platforms such as ours, it provides that opportunity for people to be in an ecosystem rather than just sporadically go fishing once. And we've got loads of that out there now where people are thinking of this as an end-to-end process rather than just this turn up once and see what happens and always call it, finger in the wind where we say, well, I hope they come back. But now we can get them signed up to a process and we can keep them in it and we can keep reminding them and give them some more tips and offer them the next event and get them booked in and loads of tools that are available to help people with that. And it's one of the reasons we've been really successful and something we're really passionate about. As a business, we invest a lot in kind of junior angling. We give discounts for angling academies to use the software. We go to events and provide coverage for free. We're doing an awful lot for juniors. It's something I've always been passionate about. I mean, most people might not know this, but I think 4 of our team members at Clubmate are qualified level 2 coaches.
Super.
So, I mean,
brilliant.
Sometimes, you get to literally 5 o'clock and press off and straight to a coaching session, which is something that's obviously hard to maintain, but, really passionate. It's great. And you can't serve anglers better than doing it yourself. Going out on the bank and teaching someone fishing is the most satisfying thing in the world.
Yeah.
So long may it continue, Matt, and let's all keep doing the best that we can do for the future. So
100%, mate.
We're going to have to try and round it out sometime today, Matt. So when are we going to go fishing, mate? We've got to go fishing at some point soon. We haven't fished together for a little while. I want to get a trip booked in.
I reckon, mate, this winter I'm going to qualify for the Silverfish final tomorrow at Moorlands as we speak. So that'll be done and dusted. That's optimistic thinking, isn't it?
This is all on camera, Matt. So let's just. I want to hear the list of achievements that are coming here.
I want to qualify for that next few weeks, and then I've got this little kid coming at some point. That's definitely going to take a little bit of time. But after Christmas and before the river season closes, we'll go and have a session barbling. I'll speak to Foy, see if we can get Foy dog out on the river. He likes to stay out on the river barbling. So we'll do that. and then I want to come to Ferry Meadows again in the spring. And we spoke about it when we did Underwater 2. I'd really like to sit on that same peg and make a fishing gurus film trying to catch the Bremen tench on a pole. So don't let no other tackle companies are allowed to do it. I've put the idea on a podcast now. So we're going to go and pole fish Ferry Meadows and catch some massive.
Yeah, it's reserved, Matt. I'll put it in the calendar. It's
Fantastic.
Exclusive access for you, Matt. We'll do it. We'll do
Now,
tackle
what do you reckon?
gurus on the pole, tension bream.
May time sort of thing would be good for that.
Always May. You get to May, mate. The fish really start to wake up. They're patrolling around the edge of that peg. Around that point that we were sat on. They patrol at no further than kind of 10 yards. They're right in the margins. They're huge fish, Matt. It'll be absolutely amazing to do a film on the pole. We're talking tench to kind of 7-8 pound plus with bream of the same size, double figures even in the bream. I've actually got a picture of me with a bream of just under 11 pound on that point.
Jesus.
Absolute slab. Like in the picture, it takes up half of me. It's like this deep and this wide. So if we can lump a few of them on the pole in that margin, mate, I think it'll make the most exciting film imaginable.
Let's try and do it. We'll maybe come the night before, put a bit of bait in and film it, do a bit of baiting, and then go early the next morning.
Yeah, I think you'll get them right really early morning, Matt. I think they patrol around the edge in the morning, then maybe move off out into the lake during the daytime. So I think it's a great opportunity to go down, put a bit of bait in, and then get out there first light. Fish for them up to about 10 o'clock in the morning. It's always 10, 11 o'clock where you kind of got that opportunity. Anywhere from first light until about 10 or 11, you've got that opportunity to catch those really close-in fish.
Yeah.
And I remember catching a big old tench on Ferry, I think it was £8, something like £8.12 or something, and I caught it on the rocks in the margin. Where you usually adjusting your seat, where usually you're adjusting your legs to kind of get it amongst the rocks and, get your box out there. I literally laid a bait on those rocks, between the rocks, because I'd seen a fish like swam past me in this margin, just no care in the world at all, just kind of swam past me, and I thought I can have them. So I just started sprinkling a bit of pellet and casters around these rocks and just pinging a few bits and pieces where, when they go snuffling amongst all the rocks kind of thing. And then I just laid a rig in the edge and kind of sat back on the bank, and all of a sudden off it went, and I caught this massive tench, and it was no further out. It weren't even up to the top of your wellies deep.
Wow.
And there's nothing more satisfying, Matt. And I think that's something we can probably replicate on the pole, getting that close in. You can imagine what the bite's going to be like when you hook a massive tench at that range.
Yeah, we'll have to try and do it on pole. It'd be mega. It'd be like the barbel film all over again. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, that barbel film was fantastic. Watching you catch barbel on the flat float was unbelievable. How big was that one you had at the end there?
We had I think they were about £8 biggest. They weren't huge, but obviously on a pole.
No, but best fighters though, Matt. I've done a lot of barbel fishing. I've had hundreds of barbel, and I even used to do, when I had more time, I used to do guided barbel fishing.
Yeah.
People always want that barbel bite, the 3-foot twitch. That don't often happen with the big ones, the really big ones. If you get to double figures, you tend to get these little kind of minute bites where they just kind of hang on to it. And when you hook into them, they're big, but they just hang on. They just kind of sit and hug bottom. Those rampant 3-foot rod bending twitches, and the same on the pole, but when you're on the barbel rod and you get that 90-degree bend, they're always like 8-9 pound. They're the best category of barbel for fights. And when people imagine that fight with barbel, it's those fish you're thinking of. So that's the best sport.
100%, mate. 100%. We'll go and have
for
a
the
day
young
barbel.
and fit. Yeah, we'll have a day barbling, mate.
Yeah.
So when are we coming on your podcast then?
Well, we've got, like I said, a little mad period now. Probably have a little break until after Christmas, but then we'll go barbel fishing and we'll sort out what we're going to chat about when you come on ours.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Looking forward to it.
Podcast plan up and barbel bagging day. We'll
use it as any excuse for us to go fishing and have a few beers, mate. And then we'll tell them we'll say we're doing some business.
That's it. Business meeting.
Yeah, business meeting. Anyway, so we'll call it a day, Matt. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been an absolutely fantastic conversation. I've never anything like chatting with you, Matt. It's been an awesome time, and thanks for finding the time for me.
You're welcome, mate. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate what you do. Appreciate what Clubmate do, mate. Keep it up. It's great for angling. And if ever we can help with anything, you know where we are.
Absolutely, Matt. Thank you very much, guys. Well, thanks very much for joining us, and we're really grateful for Matt joining us today. We've got some more great guests coming up on the next episode, so make sure you subscribe and tune in next time. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening. Join us next time for another episode of the Casting Forward podcast, brought to you by Clubmate. And if you haven't already, click the subscribe button now and follow us for more.